Hey, what's up, Raider Nation? It seems like the Raiders might possibly be hiring their coach after the Super Bowl. Let's get into that on today's episode.
Good morning, Raider Nation. Look here. The coaching carousel continues to spin. And if the Raiders do not get in line and find their guy quick, he might be taken up by another team. We'll talk about it next.
Tom Brady. Everyone believes in Tom Brady. It's time to show and prove. We'll talk about that on the Raider Squad Show. Let's get it.
Raider Nation, it's time. This is the Raiders Squad. Everything Las Vegas Raiders every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Death Star in the desert. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Commitment to excellence starts here. The Raiders Squad Show starts now.
Hey, what's good, Raider Nation? Remember, if you like the content and you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media channels. You'll see on the screen or in the description below the ways that you can connect with us. We're also on the audio side, wherever you find your shows and podcasts, we're there too. And I always say, give us a 5-star, leave a rate and review, because it's Q and Link show, and they always give the best analysis. You can't get that anywhere else. And remember, in that final segment, Link and Q will be taking some of your questions and comments. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can drop that into the chat, or we might be able to get to it on another episode. So if you're listening to this, you can always hit us up on Twitter or leave comments on our YouTube page. And like I said, we might be able to get to that on another episode. Before we get into what we're going to be talking about today, really quickly, we got to hear from our sponsors. Today's episode is sponsored by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, like I mentioned, in that fourth and final segment, Link and Q are going to be taking some of your questions and comments. Also, Stephen A. Smith had quite the monologue about the Raiders on First Take. A lot of it was negative, but we're going to play some audio from it and then hear what Link and Q think about it. And we're going to dive into Tom Brady's influence with that. We're going to give you an update on the coaching search as well. But let's start off with Maxx Crosby, because, guys, there's been so much talk about Maxx and if there's a rift between him and front office. And Q, I did see you post a picture on Twitter and you talked to Maxx. So we're going to get your thoughts on this as well. And, just that interview. But Maxx was talking to the press and he talked about if he was being kept up to date with the coaching search. So let's take a listen to that.
Not really. No, I haven't talked to them. So yeah, not in the last couple of weeks. So I've just been focused on, like I said, my family and my girls and getting healthy. But yeah, I haven't talked to them in a while.
All right. So when you hear that, Q, what were your thoughts? And do you think there is any type of rift between Maxx and the front office?
I don't think there's any riff. I think that he's probably, still a little salty about the way that the season shut down. And that's what alphas are. That's how alphas are. I was at the event. I talked to him one-on-one. I didn't get into a bunch of stuff about the organization because it was at an event that he was donating a lot of money in his foundation for our children's, just a facility that we were at that was incredible, by the way. If they had facilities like that when I was growing up, man, the things that I could have done, and it was awesome. So first of all, it was a big thing for his foundation, and I talked to him, I feel like, quite a bit at different settings, and so I didn't get into stuff like that with him. I kind of knew what he had been saying. He said it on his podcast that he hasn't been focused on nothing with the team. He's been focused on his rehab, which by the way, he was at this event on crutches, walking around on crutches, but still making sure he was making his appearance and everything. So it just felt like it was one of those scenarios where it could be a conversation later. Knew that it wasn't going to be too much. And you heard right there in the audio where he just said, yeah, I haven't, talked to him in a couple of weeks. And so I don't think that there's anything there. I think he's doing exactly what he did last year, which is what he told us when he said that he was, kind of sitting back and just letting the organization do their thing. And he was just watching from afar just to see the moves that they're making. I think he's doing the same thing now. I don't think that he's going anywhere. And at the end of the day, if the season starts next year and he's not on the roster, I think it's because he decided that he didn't want to be there and he asked for a trade, not that the Raiders are trying to move him.
There comes a time in every player's career, no matter the sport, where if you feel that you have a certain amount of influence, people are going to gravitate to you and ask you what your opinion is. Mm-hmm. And we live in a time where players have more of an influence because of social media, because of the media presence. A beat writer is going to come up to the star player and say, hey, what do you think about X, Y, and Z?
Yep.
Let me give you your opinion. And there are times where I think that opinion is warranted. Look, I don't I recall back in my day when Al Davis, may he rest in peace, came to me and he said, you know what, we're looking for a rush end. Who do you like? Who gives you the most trouble when you're playing out there? And I threw out a few names, and he gave me his opinion about one in particular, Trace Armstrong. And I said, I think Trace is a solid rush in. I think he doesn't play the run well, but he can give you something on the outside as far as getting to the quarterback. Next thing I know, Trace Armstrong was there. I didn't say that I had I didn't say that I had a say. I just gave my opinion. And I think that's where we go. Now, I'm conflicted, guys, because I grew up under a certain status quo. And this different, there's a difference between today's player. You always hear things that go on with the Lakers, they're going to ask LeBron James. You always hear your star player is going to have some sort of opinion, or someone's going to ask his opinion one way or the other. Doesn't mean it has to be law. Doesn't mean you have to go by it. And then you're going to have people who play the game. Well, does he have more say, or does he have more control, or should he be in the front office? Look, I've always felt coaches coach, players play. You can ask someone's opinion and take it however you want to take it, or you can sit there and say, well, that's law, and that's up to the individual himself. And I say that we live in a different time because I see more and more players having influence over some of those decisions, be it right, wrong, or indifferent.
Right.
But I always said that people need to stay in their lane. From a general manager standpoint, if a guy came up to me and said, look, I don't want to be here anymore, I want to go to X, Y, and Z, I'm going to look at him and say, I don't give a damn where you want to go. You know what? You quit on me. I'm going to trade you where I can get the most value. I'm going to send you where I can get the most value. I don't care where you want to go. But, we see that in basketball where guys have influences on where they want to be traded to, be it in their contract or how the other stipulations are. I say all of that to say this. When it comes to Maxx Crosby, he is the most visible Raider that we have. He's the highest paid on the roster. He should have a little bit of an opinion. If he doesn't, he doesn't. But you're going to have those beat writers, you're going to have those sources that stick a mic in his face and say, hey, Mike, what do you think about this? Should we draft Q? Should we draft Lincoln Kennedy? Should we draft Chantel? You're going to have people that are going to stick a mic in their face like that in the way he comes after. I love Maxx. I love Maxx because of the person that he is. The fact that he came from a fourth-round draft choice, virtually unknown, made himself a star in the league. I appreciate his passion for being a part of the community. I appreciate his passion for being a family man. More importantly, I appreciate the passion that he changed his life.
Yeah.
This was a man that was under constant pressure and, had some things that off the field that he didn't want to talk about or don't want to dwell in, but he changed his life to be a better person. I salute that. Doesn't make Maxx a general manager.
Right.
Doesn't. Yeah. To me, it doesn't make Maxx, the head coach. No, it doesn't. I give him his place where he is at the table, and I can appreciate his counsel. So when people stick a mic in his face and say, "What do you think about the coaching search? What do you think about this? What do you think about?" I think you're fishing. You really are. You're fishing for something. And we, as pundits that sit here every day and come across this show and critique that everything is the Raiders, all we want is to see a winner. That's all we want.
Mm-hmm.
We don't care how you get there. We don't care we just want to see a winner. We don't want it to be Patriot way. We don't want it to be a Bronco way, the Seahawks way. We want it to be a Raider way. And we're trying to find ourselves out to where that is these days. So what's the harm in taking a little bit of an opinion from a true Raider?
Yeah. I think one of the things with him as well is remember that he was very vocal when it came to hiring AP and how much he really wanted, AP to be hired as the head coach. And if, they don't go in that direction, he doesn't know if he wanted to be with the Raiders. Remember, he was very vocal about that. And even at the end of the season, when we were asking him in the locker room about different personnel type situations and what the Raiders could do, as they're, ramping up to the end of the season and could they end up with the number 1 overall pick, he let that stance be known. Like, I'm not in the personnel business. That's for other guys, right? I think that after that AP situation went as south as it did, he realized that, hey, I don't really want to be the guy that's out there talking about, I want this player, I want that player, I want this coach, I want that coach, because when it goes wrong, then all eyes are on you. Well, hey, man, that's the guy you wanted. So now what? Right. And you see that a lot. And I'm glad you brought up the NBA because the NBA is the one sport where it's really the players drive the sport. They really push the narrative. If they don't want to be somewhere, guess what? They're gone. Right. No matter what, they'll find a way to get up out of there. And like Lincoln said, they'll get to exactly where they want to go. So they can, they can get a coach hired and fired immediately. Right. And so they have that kind of in that power. But a lot of times, and I use this at LeBron all the time, he played the GM role so much throughout the course of his career. And a lot of times he played that GM role with bringing his buddies in, and it didn't work out. He still doesn't claim the Russell Westbrook move, but he was the one that was the driving force behind getting Russ to LA. And then as soon as it didn't work, it's like, I didn't want him here. No, actually, that was your guy. You know what I mean? So I think that there's a time that players realize, hey, man, I don't want to be the guy that's pounding the table for X, Y, and Z, because if it goes wrong, then all of a sudden all fingers, all thumbs, everything are pointed back at me.
Yeah, that's why they call him the GM. But I would have loved to have Link in the front office when Devontae Adams was whining like that.
Don't get me started on that one. Oh, that's a sore subject. That's a sore subject. When you quit on this,
an hour and a half. The show just became an hour and a half.
Yeah, when you quit on this, you quit on the brand. I lost you. You are no longer a Raider. I'm just saying. That's another story for another day.
Yeah, and he talked about being a Raider, and we know Maxx Crosby is a true Raider. My only concern was the fact that he says he hasn't spoke to front office or management in a few weeks. Like, is there any concern there that he's not even in contact with them? Because at near the end of the season, we know Max was upset, but we also know that he did need that surgery, and it was the right move for them to shut him down. But is there any concern at all that he hasn't even been speaking to management, Link?
No. Okay. No. Do your job. Stay in your place. Coaches coach, players play, administrators administrate. Do your thing. Do your job. I mean, look, if we come to you and ask you your opinion, I think that says something about how much respect they have. But if you're not drawn into those meetings, you're not called into those meetings, it's not your place.
Right. I just think that he's rehabbing as he lets it be known that he's working on his rehab. He's trying to get back. He said OTAs is when he's expected to be fully healthy. Right. And so, I mean, that's what his main focus is on. I mean, he literally just got in basically off a flight yesterday when we saw him from a rehab session when he was in LA. So, I mean, he's been going back and forth. I don't think that, he hasn't talked to him, but he hasn't talked to him because, I mean, again, he's not really in that same area and world that they're in right now as he's working on himself. And they're obviously working on trying to get this team in this head coaching search where it needs to go.
All right. Well, and I think we all do agree that Max will not be traded unless Max asks for a trade, and we don't believe he's going to do that. So we'll just nip that in the butt right here. But also, let's go over to rookie Ashton Jeanty, because he actually received an award. He was named to the 2025 Professional Football Writers of America All-Rookie Team. He receives that after he led all rookies in rushing with 975. He also had 1,321 scrimmage yards. Jeanty was also ranked second in the rookie class in total touchdowns with 10. We know that Ashton Jeanty didn't have that O-line in front of him, and the fact that he was still able to make a success out of his rookie year, I think, is so impressive. Link, when you hear that Jeanty was named to, the first team, and despite the fact of how terribly the Raiders struggled on offense, what does that kind of make you think about him? And do you think that he has the potential to be a top 5 back in this league?
Salutes. It comes down to that. Salutes. I give you many salutes. I give you much praise. The fact is, when a player goes out there and balls, when it seems that there are other intangibles that are against them, and especially in this instance, being an offensive player or a ball carrier, salutes. Congratulations. Good job. I'm impressed by what you've achieved during your rookie season. I'm looking forward to what you do on final and in the seasons that are to come. I'm hoping it's much of the same thing. Look, these are building blocks that an organization like the Raiders need in their back pocket. They need to have this sort of ideology of pressing toward the future. We're going to be surrounded by good guys who go out there and all about their business. So I salute that. I respect that. And that's what I appreciate about Ashton Jeanty in this season. I wish that he could have got 1,000 yards. Yeah. Even though I don't sit there and say 1,000 yards or an end-all, hold-all stat, especially with 17 games and all the things that has to happen. The fact is that he ran hard. He played hard. He did his part as a rookie. I think he warranted his draft position, being the 6th overall pick in the first round, going out there and playing as hard as he could. Didn't have all the pieces around him, didn't have the great team around him, but he did as much as he could. So I respect that, and I salute that.
Yeah, I mean, the dude went out there every single game, all 17 games, and gave everything he had. And the circumstances were less than ideal. We all know that. There was games that he had, a good amount of usage, 10, 15 carries and some catches. There were some games where he was basically non-existent, right? I mean, it's just kind of the ebbs and flows of what the season did, but still just coming up 25 yards short of 1,000 yards. And I know, like Link said, it's not the end-all be-all, but, man, I mean, the dude was out there working his tail off. And I feel like once the Raiders get a really good offense once they get a good offensive scheme, once they take care of their offensive line and get their quarterback in play, I feel like we're going to see even a much more improved Ashton Jeanty. And I think that he knows that as well. And, to be able to, as a rookie, go through that kind of season and not get too low, especially when you came off the success that you just had in college, that's a culture shock to a lot of people. You're all of a sudden, you're the man, right? I mean, you're walking around campus with your chest pumped out, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, man, you only got 9 carries in the game. Hey, man, you only got 45 yards. What happened? Like, oh, man, I don't know. I'm not used to that, right? I mean, he gets 45 yards on 1 carry in college, right? So all of a sudden it's a new ball game, but just everything that he brought to the table, going over 1,300 yards from scrimmage, having 10 total touchdowns his rookie year, and the Raiders offense being awful. I mean, I just, again, like Lincoln said, I salute to Ashton Jeanty, and I just get excited about what can be as long as the Raiders go out and make the right decisions, the right, the right signings, and of course the draft picks as well, and put this thing together the right way.
Chantel, before we continue, you produce a great show. We love you to death, sis. I'm interested because you know the game as well as we do. What are your impressions of Ashton in lieu of the circumstances that he dealt with?
Good question.
I should probably unmute myself, but
I think it would help. It would help.
I think how Ashton Jeanty performed this year was really impressive. Like, he didn't have the O-line in front of him. He struggled in the beginning. We saw flashes of what he could really do on the field. And I think that's the most important thing. He had some games where he really impressed. And we know that he's a back that gets better when he continues to get those carries. And that's something that we didn't see a lot this season because they tried to run the ball and then they would abandon running the ball. And I think that was tough for a guy like Ashton Jeanty. But what was really impressive to me was the fact that he stayed healthy and he had a good attitude. And in a season where there was so much chaos, coaches getting fired, there's so many rumors like surrounding the team, Ashton Jeanty just stayed true to who he was. And for me, that shows his character. And I think when you're building a football team and you're bringing guys onto the team, character is a big thing that matters. We just talked about Davante Adams and how his character was near the end of his time being in the silver and the black. So for me, Ashton Jeanty performed really well. The fact that he was second in rookie touchdowns is even more impressive, right? This is a guy that didn't have an O-line in front of him.
Yeah.
Like, that is so impressive to me. So, I do believe in the sophomore slump as well. So that was going to be my next question for you guys as we talk about what's going to be a success for him, because there is that sophomore slump. But here's the thing. I think the Raiders are going to invest in that O-line. I think that's going to be one of their biggest focuses when it comes to free agency. So I'll ask you guys, what would be a successful season for Ashton Jeanty in his second year? Link?
Well, I mean, when we talk about the sophomore slump, and I believe it to the degree, I believe it more so in, let's say, the position quarterback rather than running back, because I believe you show off certain tangibles at quarterback as far as your reads, your progression, your timing, and everything else as a quarterback when you're rookie in this league. Doesn't necessarily pursue for a running back, in my opinion, because let's face it, there are going to be a number of changes from the offensive philosophy, the run game, and the offensive line in the middle of it. So I don't necessarily think there's necessarily a sophomore slump for running backs. It could happen. I mean, obviously anything could happen, but I don't necessarily look at it that way. So, as far as, that comment of sophomore slump, I don't think it's applicable here because there's going to be so many changes. It's almost as a rookie being drafted all over again, going into a situation, because there are going to be that many changes before them. Now, how he handles it, if he comes out and he chokes up the ball a couple of times, and it costs him a game, or he drops a couple of passes when he's coming out of the backfield, or no longer pick up a blitz, then you can sit there and say, okay, there's something going on up here. But I don't necessarily think the words sophomore slump are applicable to a running back. That's just my opinion.
No, I'm with you, and I think that for Ashton, it's only going up, right?
Yeah.
I think that his trajectory is going up, which is a good thing, right? And a lot of times you'll see that with a rookie running back, they'll have a good year, and then you'll see them get better as the next couple years go by. So I think that Ashton is on a great trajectory. I also think that he's going to be a guy that they help build whatever offense they put together, whatever coaching staff they bring in. I think they're going to really be able to build on him. I mean, like the thing we know about him, he's a really talented player. The thing we know about Brock Bowers, he's a really talented player. Like, the Raiders have some guys, right? Michael Mayer still on his rookie deal. Really talented player. Like, that's what you need, and that's your building blocks. And so I just think that things are going to be good for Ashton Jeanty moving forward. Now, it's, if he had gone out and had like a Saquon Barkley type year when Saquon went for 2,000 yards, right? If he had a year like that, you saw what Saquon did this past year. It wasn't anything close to that because a lot of times it's not. You go back to the history of the NFL, guys that rush for 2,000 yards, look at their next season. It's never close to that because, again, you've already, landed on the moon. What else are you going to do? So, it's if he had a year like that where it was just incredible and he was the best, running back in the league and this, that, and the third, then there's something I could say maybe there could be a sophomore slump or he'll regress a little bit. But I just think that the trajectory for Ashton Jeanty is just moving up. That's it.
Yeah, and this actually just came through from Adam Schefter, so I'll read it because it's about another running back in the league. 49ers Christian McCaffrey is believed to be the first player in NFL history to be a finalist for MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, and Comeback Player of the Year all in the same season. Wow. So when we talk about, running backs that have been doing their thing, I think CMC is one of those dudes. But coming up on the other side, the coaching search continues. I think the Raiders are narrowing it down. So we'll get into that on the other side. So keep it locked here on the Locked On Network. You're watching or listening to the Raider Squad Show. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action, so when the momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator, play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. NFL season is in full swing, and there's nothing like being at the game, the crowd noise, the energy, the cheering outside alongside other fans. Watching at home is great, but being in the stadium hits different. The frustrating part has always been getting tickets, waiting in queues, dealing with logins, and watching prices change at the checkout. That's why the Gametime app gives the advantage back to fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NFL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. What I love about Gametime is that there's no hidden fees. If you use other apps and you buy tickets and at the end of checkout, they add like over $100, but not on the Gametime app. And they also give you the lowest prices. So take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today and get back to being there live. Welcome back, Raider Nation. Remember, if you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. And you can also follow us on our social media channels. You'll see in the description below the ways that you can connect with us. And remember, in that final segment, Link and Crew are going to be taking some of your questions and comments. So if you're watching this on YouTube right now, drop them in the chat. If you're listening to this, you can always hit us up on YouTube later or even on Twitter, and we may be able to get to some of your questions on another episode. All right, so the coaching search. A lot of teams are hiring coaches. The Raiders haven't yet. So they finished their second interviews with Ejiro Evero and also Jesse Minter. And the thing that really surprises me is there was so much talk about Jesse Minter. And, he's the Michigan guy. But I feel like there's a lot of strong ties to Baltimore. And if the Raiders were going to hire him, they would have already. But I think they're eyeing a coach that's in the playoffs. So my question to you, Link, is from the coaches that they've interviewed and who's still available, who do you think the Raiders might be interested in the most?
Sis, I've said for the past few weeks, I still believe the Raiders' future head coach is still in the playoffs. They're still in situation. But it promotes a very dangerous game because these other teams, there are so many teams that are open. They're hiring these guys. You run a very big risk unless you have a gentleman's agreement, wink, wink, handshake, that type of thing with your future head coach. You run a very dangerous game. You might run the possibility where all these teams are taking up the great candidates or candidates that you see in your eye that we're going pushing forward. And so that's the gamble that you run. But I still believe it. And there are 4 teams left. I still believe the Raiders' future head coach is still in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree 100%. The future coach is either on the Rams coaching staff, the Seahawks coaching staff or the Broncos coaching staff. Clint Kubiak is in Seattle, Davis Webb is in Denver, and Mike LaFleur is in LA with the Rams. That's just the three that I have come to the top of my mind, and I really think it comes down to Clint Kubiak and Davis Webb. Those would be the two in the leaders in the clubhouse for me. There's a couple things here. Tom Brady is on a lot of these calls for Seahawks games. He'll be on the call this week for the Seattle game. So he's seeing Clint Kubiak up close and personal. He's seeing what he's been able to do with that offense, knowing that, hey, a quarterback's coming in for the Raiders most likely, and Fernando Mendoza. How can this guy who's worked with multiple different style of quarterbacks, how can he get the most out of this young prospect? So I think that that's what's going through Tom Brady's mind. And remember last year when he had the big push for Ben Johnson, he was on a lot of those calls. He saw a lot of Ben Johnson, with the Detroit Lions when he was able to see, what he was doing with the offense. And that's when he was making that big push for the Raiders to try to get Ben Johnson to be their head football coach. So I think that there's something there with Clint Kubiak. LaFleur, obviously he comes from the McVay tree, which I don't think there's anything wrong with picking from the McVay tree. It seems like really good things happen when coaches come from that, from that, like I said, that tree. And then, of course, Davis Webb is the guy that a lot of people aren't really familiar with what he brings to the table, but he's being considered not just by the Raiders, but also by the Ravens, the Buffalo Bills. I actually, on my radio show yesterday, I had a guy that covers Buffalo, does the pregame and postgame show for the Bills. And I said, well, who's the ideal replacement for Sean McDermott? He said, guys, I don't think the Bills are going to make a hire until Denver's out. I think Davis Webb's going to be their guy. And I was like, wow, that's the Buffalo Bills with an MVP quarterback, Josh Allen. So when people say, oh, yeah, of course the Raiders would go hire some no-name guy in Davis Webb, like, it's not the Raiders that are the only team that's interested in Webb, right? Like I said, Baltimore, Buffalo, the Raiders, they all could be, potential suitors for Davis Webb to be the head football coach. And Jeremy Fowler from ESPN had an interesting nugget yesterday that he tweeted out that there's a possibility if Davis Webb does get a head coaching job, Cliff Kingsbury might actually be his offensive coordinator, and Kingsbury actually coached him at Texas Tech. So a little bit of a role reversal, kind of silly. I'm not too sure how I feel about that because I feel like Cliff Kingsbury's offenses are good in the beginning of the season, and then as you see towards the end of the season, defenses really start to catch up with them. But that's something for them to work out. But it's just a little nugget that I thought I'd pass along.
Also, one thing that kind of came about was the fact that Mike McDaniel seems like he will be signing with the Chargers as their OC, but he says that's only going to happen if he doesn't get a head coaching position, right? So I think he's kind of using that as leverage as well. Yeah. And when you think about the Raiders, they also interviewed Mike McDaniel. They did that in Miami. And do you think that if Mike McDaniel goes to the Chargers, and we know that it's always a divisional battle, right? The Raiders have struggled to win against their divisional opponents. How much of a loss would that be for the Raiders? But do you also feel like Mike McDaniel's using this as leverage, Link?
Oh, he's definitely using it as leverage.
Sure.
Without a doubt, he's using it as leverage. Look, I believe the AFC West is the most competitive division in football in current standards, okay? I believe that you have a gauntlet of any team can rise. Obviously, we've seen it. Denver taking the division and having a first round bye and controlling the AFC, making sure it goes through Denver. So we've seen that. We've seen the dominance from Kansas City. We've seen the rise. The Chargers have been competitive enough. They haven't won it yet, but they've been competitive enough. And of course, we all know where the Raiders stand. So I think this is the most competitive division. But there's no doubt in my mind that McDaniel is using this as leverage. There's absolutely no doubt. And kudos. Good. So good job. That's what you're supposed to do when you're in this position. That's what I've often thought when a former head coach is possibly going to be relegated to a coordinator spot or an assistant coach. Where do they go from here? Do they take a step, a demotion, or do they take a sidestep to another team? And so I see it being used as leverage. But look, if McDaniel does become the OC of the Chargers, that makes them just as equal of an enemy as whomever is taking that position, and whether it be young blood or whatever. You cannot discount because they've got good players. Every team has got good players, so you got to get in line. You got to find a way to compete with it. But as I said before, when we opened up the show, the Raiders are playing a very dangerous game, in my opinion. If you wait to the last minute to hire your head coach, not only are you dealing with the intangibles of evaluating for the combine and the scouts, getting your scouts in line for what you want for your team, but your coach might not be there.
Right.
And so if you don't have that gentleman's agreement, if you don't have that handshake under the table, like you're going to be our guy, just finish doing what you're doing, there's a good chance that guy might say, you know what? Baltimore came calling. I like Baltimore.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I mean? Or one of these other teams came calling. I like them too. So that's the game that you play. But look, McDaniel's using is smart. He is there. There's no short of that. Q, I know he's smart. He's using this to this leverage and this in his advantage.
For sure. And look, there's certain guys, and Link, you bring this up all the time. Certain guys are better head coaches than offensive coordinators. Some guys are better offensive coordinators than head coaches. I think Mike McDaniel is a better OC than he is a head coach. I think that would be a really good landing spot for him in LA with the Chargers. It's funny. It kind of comes full circle because I always thought the Dolphins should have drafted Herbert instead of Tua anyway. And so now all of a sudden it's like he gets the opportunity to coach up Herbert. The thing about it is if he takes that OC job, a reality is he's not going to be there long. Because if he does do well, like everyone expects him to do, because he is a sharp offensive mind, like I don't want to take that from him at all. If he does well, he'll be in what? He'll be in the next coaching cycle, and then he'll be the hot candidate, and he'll probably get another head coaching job. I was interested when the Raiders, interviewed him because I was just trying to figure it out. Like, how does this work? What would this dynamic look like? There's things about Coach McDaniel and his style that I like, and then there's other things that I don't like. I don't like the fact that he was never able to prepare a team to play in the cold weather, and I get it. He coached in Miami, so that's not, you can't really play in or coach up in the elements. But it just seemed like his team never had an element of toughness, and every time that they went somewhere that wasn't great weather, the sun was out, and sun's out, guns out, whatever, you knew that they were going to take a L. Right. Every time he was in the cold, he looked miserable. Right. So when he was in for the Browns job and then he pulled his name out, I was like, yeah, of course. He hates the cold. Why would he do that? When he was in Philadelphia, and interviewing for the OC job, I was like, he's not taking that job. He hates the cold. Like, he doesn't want anything to do with that. That dude, if you looked at him on the sideline, he hates that. So him landing in LA, shocking. Right. That doesn't surprise me at all. So I'm sure he'll do that job if, in fact, he doesn't get a head coaching job. I don't know what kind of staff he'd put together. That would be the only thing that intrigues me. But if he were to take an OC job, whether it's in LA with the Raiders or anyone else, he's not going to be there long. He'll be a hot OC, and then boom, he'll move on to be a head coach somewhere. That's just kind of the trajectory. So even if he lands in LA, I don't think he'll be there very long.
Let's not forget about the possibility of who's the head coach in LA. It's Harbaugh.
Yes, Yep.
Harbaugh wants control. He wants control over personnel decisions. He's also going to have control over coaching decisions. If he could, he will have his influence in the coaching philosophy of the offense because he's an offensive-minded former quarterback, and he's had that control every place he's went. He's gone from Stanford to San Francisco to Michigan, and now here to the Chargers. But it also, let's create an offense that's harmonious to the players that we have on our roster right now. I see Harbaugh saying that, but he'll still have his influence. He's going to still have his say. So when it comes to coaching hires, when it comes to coaching decisions, Harbaugh's still going to be involved with it. Let's not think otherwise of that. But McDaniel to the Chargers, as Q said, in many ways it makes sense. And if I'm Mike McDaniel, I'm holding the fact that I do have some leverage.
Yeah,
I do have it, and I'm going to take this job. You know where I'm sitting. I've got a job waiting for me. So unless you make me a more lucrative offer, I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm going to stay here, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and I think he purposely did that, choosing the Chargers, because the Raiders had interviewed him.
Yep.
And listen, they're going to get the number 1 overall pick. A lot of people do believe it's going to be Mendoza. And Mike McDaniel saying, hey, I'm going to stick with the Chargers unless I get a head coaching position. I think it was kind of a shot to the Raiders, but I do think he's brilliant when it comes to the offensive game. So I think it would kind of hit some Raider fans a little bit hard if he did become the OC for the Chargers. But then I also think there's going to be a bit of a power struggle with Mike McDaniel and obviously the head coach there, right? Because as you just said, Link, he likes the control. Now, my question to you is another name that's been being thrown around is Cliff Kingsbury. Mm-hmm. But the Raiders haven't actually interviewed him, if I'm not mistaken. No. Q, do you think that they'll go after a guy like Cliff Kingsbury, or if they were going to, they would have already?
Yeah, I think if they were going to, they would have already, gone after him. Like I said, the most intriguing thing with that name is could he potentially be Davis Webb's OC? And again, that's kind of weird since he's been a head coach and Davis Webb hasn't. So it's almost like the student is teaching the teacher, which is kind of backwards, right? You would think it's the other way around, like Cliff Kingsbury would be the head coach and Davis Webb would be the OC, but it doesn't sound like that's what it's going to be. Like I said, I like Cliff to a certain extent. I like what he's able to do. I think his offenses are creative, but I do think that they're figured out. pretty quickly. I mean, you go back and look at Arizona. They always seem to start really hot when he was the head coach, and then they fizzled out, right? I mean, I go back with Cliff Kingsbury when he was at Texas Tech, covering him in the Big 12, and I saw how those offenses operated and saw that the rest of the team wasn't worth the salt. They couldn't put together a defense to save their life, or they would have won a lot of games. Couldn't do it. I'm not a big fan of him as the head coach. I was intrigued when he was supposed to be Antonio Pierce's offensive coordinator. I thought, okay, that's great. You know, a guy, that's coming in. AP's got the reins there as the head coach, and he's going to be the OC, a former head coach, so he can kind of help him out as well. But just be in charge of the offense, I think, similar to Mike McDaniel, that is a really good job for Cliff Kingsbury, just being the guy that runs the offense, just not being the whole CEO of the team. So I'm not really too high on Cliff Kingsbury, and the fact that the Raiders haven't even interviewed him yet, I think it tells you all you need to know.
You know, for what it's worth, over the years, I've tried to figure out why a person like Eric Bieniemy couldn't get a head coaching job. Then when I delved deeper into it, I realized in talking to a lot of people, they said, look, he doesn't interview well because he doesn't have a plan as a head coach.
Right.
That tells me you're better suited as a coordinator. Now, we've learned from the Patriots tree and other coaching trees that there are guys who are better suited as coordinators than they are head coach. and I do think that Kingsbury's in that sort of area. You know, I looked at him when he was in Arizona, and they drafted Kyler Murray, and I thought at the time Kyler Murray was a mistake, just mainly because of his size. Forget about the intangibles. And now, you know, living here in Phoenix, they're talking about, well, who's their next quarterback? Because they've totally written off, you know, Kyler Murray. They've gone with Jacoby Brissett for this season, and now they're looking for a quarterback. They're a mess in their own doing. But I don't care about them. I say that to say this: as I watch Kingsbury and with the Commanders, what he's been able to do over the last couple of years, I do think he's a creative offensive mind. I respect that and I appreciate that. But I think he's better suited as a coordinator. So if I'm Cliff Kingsbury, I'm probably getting in line with that mindset to what Q was talking about, you know, where a pupil of his now becomes the head man. Bring me along. Let's do this thing together. Let's honor that together. Much as I see Eric Bieniemy traveling around the league. There's talks where he's going to return to Kansas City under Andy Reid.
He did.
You know, okay, that's, to me, that's truth. That's promise, because that's where you had the most success. And so I love EB. I love Eric Bieniemy. I've played against him in college. Know him. I do know him. But I don't know why he's not gotten a head coaching job. There's something there. There's something he said that. So I say that to say this. There are some guys who are better suited at being coordinators than they are head coaches.
Yeah, that's just facts. And you take a look at Josh McDaniel, not the best head coach, but a really good OC, right? On the other side, though, we're going to get into some comments that Stephen A. Smith made on First Take. That's on the other side. So keep it locked here on the Locked On Network. You're watching or listening to the Raiders Squad Show. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for your last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. Welcome back, Raider Nation. Remember, if you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. So as you know, because it's the off season, because the Raiders have the #1 overall pick, everybody's talking about the Raiders. The national media is going crazy, but for most of the season, they weren't talking about the Raiders. But now is the time where they're getting all of the attention. So yesterday on First Take, Stephen A. was asked about if the Raiders were to draft Mendoza, and also who should be making the decision on that. I'm not going to play the full entire 3-minute clip that I saw, but I'm going to play a piece of it and then get Link and Q's thoughts. So let's take a listen to Stephen A. Smith on First Take, courtesy of ESPN.
I don't think the Raiders would be a good fit for anything. I'm happy for Tom Brady because I love him. I love my guy, but my God, he's the only good thing about the Raiders. He's the only thing to celebrate. That and Las Vegas, because we all love Vegas. Okay, that's about it. There's nothing else that's good about this organization. And so, you know, again, I don't have any questions about Mendoza. And when you think about them having to buffer their offensive line, you know, you're looking at it and you're saying you hope the dude doesn't get ruined before they're able to build a team. My trepidation, Peter and Doggy and Shay, would be about how long is it going to take to build the other parts around him. I don't believe anything else I'm fine with. Make the decision by committee. You know, dot your I's, cross your T's, consult with everybody, confer with everybody, fine. When it comes to the quarterback, I don't give a damn who it is. Shut the hell up and let Tom Brady make the call. He's a 7-time champion, a former 6th-round pick in the National Football League by the New England Patriots. This man and what he has done with his career is nothing short of phenomenal. This man is qualified. He is a minority owner with the franchise. Mark Davis moved the hell aside, okay? We're tired of looking at you. Everybody, what is it, Spy Tech? What the hell is his name? Spyvex? Spy Tech? What the hell? The GM, what is his name, Peter? Okay, no, the Spy Tech, whatever the hell his name is. Okay. Who cares? That's the second round. That's late in the first one. Whatever other picks you have. Not the number 1 pick, which is going to be a quarterback. There is one man that has to make that decision, and that has to be Tom Brady. If Tom Brady isn't the one that's making this decision, and there's some majority or some consensus or whatever, what the hell is he there for? He doesn't need to be there. This is his call.
I find that very interesting because Tom Brady has never done this before. He's never been in this situation. He doesn't have the experience. We know his experience. Link, we're going to go with you first because I like your reaction right now. What were your thoughts on what Stephen A. Smith just said?
Is there anyone else that's more passively aggressive on air? I mean, look at this. Within that excerpt that you said, and this is a reason why I really don't watch that show.
Facts.
He comes out and he says, there's nothing good about Vegas. There's nothing good about the Raiders. There's nothing good about. Then you want to allude to let Tom Brady make the call. Well, Mark Davis has already said that he's going to let Tom Brady make the call. And Spytech will make the call.
Right.
So why do you have to go on a tangent about that? But there's nothing good about Vegas. I don't care who they draft. It's nothing good. That's what you start the conversation of. I don't care who they draft. There's nothing good. Pick Mendoza. I have to watch my words because I know this is covered online.
Family show. It's a family show.
You know what I'm saying? It's a family show. There are people who have opinions out there, and let that be their opinions. I know this. We all want what's best for the Raiders. We want to see the Raiders turn around. We want to see them make a winner. We know that it's a mess right now. We know that there's plenty of work that needs to be done. And, you know, prior to our show starting, which is just this past season, I've often said, who's making the decisions? Who's making the calls? Now that we have it, let's put it in their hands. We have our certain amount of influence from whatever perspective people look at us and view us and judge us. And if people call me, I'll give my honest opinion. Q and I do a hit on this show all the time. I talk about my opinion of where they are and where they need to be. I give my opinion. You take it for a grain of salt. You take it for what it's worth. It's my opinion. Thanks. So it's just my opinion. I'm not trying to allude to saying that should be the Bible or where it should go. So I don't get on a tangent to where I get all fired up. But I just think think of things like this. Are the Raiders a mess? Absolutely. They've been a mess for a few years.
Right.
Would I hope they get it right? Absolutely. I hope with everything that it's in the fiber of my being, they get it right. And I hope that they find their way. And they're in that search of finding that way. And it starts with the hierarchy. The hierarchy has been established. Now we'll see what their decision-making turns out, and then we'll see the results. That's all I can go by. And that's all that's what I sit with every day. Right, Q?
Yeah, exactly. And look, I work for ESPN. I respect Stephen A. I respect the grind. I respect how he got to where he got, and he's very successful. So I'm not going to ever take that away from him. But when he starts talking about the Raiders and talking about shut the hell up, first of all, who's talking?
Right.
Who's talking? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, nobody said anything. Nobody said a word. John Spytek hasn't said anything. Wow. Tom Brady hasn't said anything. So Mark Davis isn't talking. So who's shutting the hell up? I mean, they're out at the national championship game scouting their quarterback, right? Fernando Mendoza. They're doing the work, right? To not know John Spytek's name, I think that's disrespectful. I know it came off as a joke, and everyone had a good laugh out of it. But I mean, he doesn't know anything about the organization. He really doesn't know a whole lot about football. And I'm not, as far as like he does with the NBA. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to come off disrespectful because I do have a lot of respect for him. Because I know it's not easy to get where he's gone. So I respect that grind. I've had an opportunity to interview him a couple times, and I think that that's great. But with that being said, NBA is where his really where how he butters his bread, not necessarily the National Football League. And when I watched the whole like 4-minute clip of it when he's sitting there with his paper like this and saying, well, since 2003 they haven't done this, that, and he's just going through everything that a producer put in his hand. It's like, okay, that's cool. Whatever. You're just doing just going through it and making a big show and a bit out of it. And that's what First Take has become. That's why I don't watch the show either. It just kind of is what it is with me. But, at the end of the whole thing to say, get out of the way, Tom Brady, and then just go ahead and wax poetically about how fantastic Tom Brady is. How do you know what he's going to do in the front office? How do you know that's not proven? There's no track record of that. There's a track record of greatness on the field. There's a track record of championships on the field and having great players around him and making them better as the starting quarterback. There's no track record of him going in the front office. So just to assume that he's going to be some great talent evaluator and some great roster builder and to the point where you need to get out of the way because this is what he does. Like, this isn't Vince Lombardi. You know what I mean? This isn't Phil Jackson, right? I mean, this isn't, Pat Riley. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm just calling out all the different guys through different sports that have put great teams together, right? This isn't Bob Myers, when they were putting the Warriors teams together. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that, right? I mean, it's not somebody that you look at and you're like, man, this guy, he really knows how to put teams together, right? I mean, that's not who it is. So he has to prove that he knows how to do that. I've used this example many times, and Chantel, I know you respect him. You got him on the wall. I got him on my wall as well. Michael Jeffrey Jordan is the greatest basketball player to ever play, in my opinion. In my opinion, that's fine. It wasn't worth the salt when it came to putting a team together. It was terrible as an owner, right? And I think that if he was going to be honest with you, he'd tell you the truth. Now, he ain't going to be honest with you. He ain't going to tell you that, but he wasn't very good. So just because you were great on the field doesn't mean that you're going to be great off the field and in the front office. Ask John Elway how difficult that is. Ask Pat Millen, someone that I know, Link, you respect the hell out of, I respect the hell out of. Guess what? Building a team, that ain't easy.
Yeah.
Right? Just because you were great at it on the field doesn't mean that you're going to be great at putting a team together. It's just not it's not the same thing.
And with all those people that you named that had success, they weren't successful until they showed that they can do it.
Right.
Pat Riley, came from, if you know the Lakers history, Pat Riley rose from a level of obscurity when he was setting up film and being basically the GA, the graduate assistant, to coach, and of course, and then what he did in management and the level afterwards wasn't that person until he showed that he can do it. And that's the thing that we're still waiting for Tom Brady. Look, I can give Tom Brady. Anyways, I was there when the night it started. Okay, with Tom Brady. I'll say that again. I was there the night it started. Did he have a tremendous career? Absolutely. A career that only if you were in your dreams, you couldn't imagine go out any better with the amount of championships and everything. But I will say this, Tom Brady played a part of a team. He wasn't the only ones doing it. He wasn't the only ones out there. He had a defense. He had players around him. He had a coaching staff. He had a philosophy. He did it with the team. That's what we're hoping the Raiders can build here. I don't care how you get there. Just get there.
And Brady might end up being fantastic.
Absolutely.
Right? We all might go back and be like, man, I'm so glad Brady's part of the organization. Great things have happened. But until it's shown, until it's proven, we don't know. We're just assuming because he was great on the field.
Right.
Yeah. And here's another question for both of you is just the focus that's being put on Tom Brady and the spotlight that's being put on him, because Mark Davis has said that he's going to be involved in these decisions. So if all else fails, a lot of heat is going to be put on Tom Brady. How much pressure do you think that puts on Tom to be making the right decisions for this season? Because I feel like with everything that happened, a lot of blame got put on Pete Carroll. A lot of blame got put on Chip Kelly. Not a lot of people were saying this is Tom Brady's fault, but we knew that he brought in Chip Kelly. So I feel like now the spotlight's on Tom. And if things don't go well next season, I think he's going to hear a lot of criticism. Link, what are your thoughts on that?
Sis, how are you going to take minority ownership away? What are you going to tell me? Oh, well, Tom, you failed. Sell your shares? Come on now.
Right.
Tom Brady's still going to be a minority owner. Even if this entire experiment fails drastically, who's going to be the scapegoat? Spytek's out.
Oh, yeah, Spytek will definitely take the
Your general manager's out.
And Spytek's doing a lot of the heavy lifting, too.
Exactly.
He's doing a lot of the heavy lifting.
And I think Spytek wants that because he wants to prove his value. This was an assistant general manager in Tampa Bay. Now gets the general manager to go. So I think there's a lot of focus on him, and it should be.
Right.
That's your position, not ownership.
But you know, the funny thing about it, Link, is if the Raiders make all the right decisions this offseason and this team gets turned around, and next thing you know, we're talking about them in the playoffs.
No doubt.
All the
No
credit's
doubt.
going to go to Brady.
Absolutely.
All the credit's going to go to Brady.
Absolutely.
So to your point,
Absolutely.
Chantel, if they don't, there's going to be a lot that's going to say, "Oh, Brady failed. Brady failed." Right? But John Spytek, like, he's not just a puppet. He's not just standing there and waiting for Tom Brady to speak and say jump, and he says how high. He's putting in the work. He's the guy that's in the lab with the scouts. He's the guy who's doing everything. Is he on the phone with Brady? His words, not mine. Yes, he says he said it. I'm not speaking for John Spytek. John Spytek said he's on the phone with Brady all the time. They speak all the time. They go back and forth all the time. But this is John Spytek's team.
Yep.
And it wasn't his team last year. Last year it was Brady, Pete Carroll, and then John Spytek. Now John Spytek has risen up the ranks. And so now he's getting the opportunity to build his team in his vision. And obviously, to Mark Davis's statement, right? It's John Spytek and Tom Brady. They're going to run the football operations. Again, we're not putting words in anyone's mouth. We're not saying anything that you can't look up online and see it in black and white. It's right there. We're not speculating. We're not assuming. We're not making up words, right? I mean, it's right there. This is what has been said. This is what has been written. So that's how they're putting this team together. But trust and believe, if this team gets things turned around and they're flying high and they're looking good and the Raiders are back, this, that, and the other, Tom Brady's the greatest thing ever. That's what they'll say. Promise you that.
Yeah, and I do want to agree with Q really quickly. The fact that Stephen A. Smith was disrespectful to John Spytek, not getting his name right, also proved to me that he hasn't been following this team, that he doesn't know what's going on with this team. So he shouldn't really be talking about it, but they're going to be talking about the Raiders. And one thing's for sure, when the Raiders start getting good, everyone jumps on the bandwagon.
Absolutely.
Like, you start seeing people wearing a bunch of Raiders stuff that you never saw before in the city. And you're like, when did you pop up? I've been here, but when did you? Right. Yeah.
And you know what? They get good. They start playing at a high level. And all of a sudden, everyone starts coming into Vegas to see the games. And Lincoln's at Allegiant. He knows all these different guys. Stephen A. will be there. He'll show up at Allegiant Stadium. He'll be kissing the ring of Mark Davis. Oh, man, great. That's just kind of what he'll do. Obviously, there's a long way to go for the team to get there, but he'll be right there. He'll be right there. Man, Mark's my guy. Like, he'll completely switch what he's saying right now. He'll switch that up. Trust and believe that.
Yeah, and coming up on the other side, Raider Nation, Link and Q are going to be taking some of your questions and comments. So keep it locked here on the Locked On Network. You're watching or listening to the Raider Squad Show. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page, and you help reach the right candidates faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than a non-sponsored job. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. All right, welcome back, Raider Nation. Remember, if you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Also, the Raider Squad Show is part of the Locked On Network, and that's the #1 sports podcasting network. We're very proud of that. So thanks so much for continuing to support the show and rocking out with the show. So whether you make Locked On Raiders your first listen of the day and the Squad Show your second listen of the day, we do appreciate you. All right, let's get to some questions and comments with Lincoln Q. And I feel like we got a lot of comments today. So let's go to Casanova Court Club for the squad.
Walt. Shout out to Walt.
Yeah.
Walt.
Yeah. Bears last year traded for 2 O-linemen. I've done a little work. Thoughts on Vikings right tackle Brian O'Neill through a trade? Oh, Link, you already. What do you feel about that?
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. This is a good player.
Yeah,
he's a good player.
he is.
Brian's a good player. I love it. I love it. It's the possibility. If the trade demands aren't too high. But because you do have cap space, because you do have draft picks, you have a lot of collateral. Well, as I said before, we're not one player away. I think this is a move that makes sense. And I was watching the playoff game where Joe Thule was playing left tackle for the Bears, and I was like, my goodness, he's doing a decent job at left tackle, playing mostly center and guard throughout his career. He's done a good job being put on the perimeter, exposed in. So I think anything is possible, but it comes down to what is the value and what's the worth to make a play like that. But I love the idea. Casanova Court Club. I love the idea.
If the value is right, then I think that they would be in on it, because John Spytek has let it be known that he loves his draft picks. When Pete Carroll was trying to trade away picks and bring in players last year, he was like, hey, man, I had to tell Pete, like, I value my picks. Like, I don't want to just give all my picks away. But John Spytek does also value the offensive line. So one way or the other, he's going to get an offensive line put together. I love that when Ben Johnson took over with the Bears, they made sure that they went out and did everything that they had to do to address the offensive line. They knew that that was a struggle right there. And so they went and got guys from other teams, like Walt's saying. They went and made moves. They made trades to bring in offensive linemen. That the Raiders have to do that. They know that. That's a subject that's been beaten over the head. It's in multiple times, right? So they know that that's something that has to be taken care of. So somehow, some way, they'll address that. Free agency, I believe they're going to go all in if they have to make a trade or two, and that's a good one. Brian O'Neill, good player, as you mentioned. I would see no problem with them doing that.
I love Brian O'Neill's pad love and his footwork, especially at tackle spot. I think he's an excellent tackle.
All right, let's go over to Jack's 532. Q and Link, explain why you think Mendoza can be successful with the Raiders.
Well, he's got his leadership qualities. He's a really good quarterback. He can make all the throws. You've seen that. He makes Sunday throws all the time. He's a guy that's got 35 plus starts in college football, which means he has experience. He's going to be 23 by the time the draft comes around. So again, he's a little bit older of a prospect, and that's still a young prospect. And he's dealt with adversity, right? I mean, this is a guy that had one offer, and it was from Yale, and that's not even a scholarship, right? I mean, because they don't offer, full rides. When he had his signing day, he signed a blank piece of paper just so he can go through the motions, because they don't have signing days for the Ivy Leagues. And then all of a sudden, because of one phone call, and believe it or not, Bill Musgrave. Yeah, remember that name, Bill Musgrave, when he, was the architect of the Raiders offense back in 2016 when they had the best season that they could have until Derek Carr broke his ankle. Yeah, that Bill Musgrave brought him to Cal, right, and said, hey, this guy's got a little something. And so he's a guy that's dealt with adversity. The Raiders are going to deal with adversity. I think that he's got all the leadership skills. I think he's great for the locker room. And I just think that there's so many things that he can do and is going to help this team do to take them where they need to go. So I'm all in on Fernando Mendoza.
Ditto. I'm trying to point to Q. They're that way. Yeah. Ditto. What Q said. I agree.
We move on.
Okay. Speaking of Bill Musgrave, we got this comment in. Any chance we bring in Bill Musgrave as OC if the pickings get slim, if we get our head coach after the Super Bowl?
Well, I think it goes to the head coach and their discretion. I believe the head coach should have some say in his coaching staff.
Yep.
And whoever it is. And as we've talked about throughout the show in the past couple of weeks, I still think the Raiders' future head coach is coaching in the playoffs.
Agreed.
So I think they should have some say. But I mean, I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't mind if somebody coming back, as I said about David Shaw. I thought that David Shaw should probably make an appearance and somewhere in these conversations. But it is what it is. So, but I think the head coach should have some say in it. So I don't have a problem with that.
Look, I'm not worried about the rest of the staff, because to Lincoln's point, the head coach should be making those decisions. What kind of offense is he going to run, and who's going to help him run it? Who's going to be his OC? Who's going to be his quarterback coach? Who's going to be his offensive line coach? That should be on him. No more arranged marriages. That clearly doesn't work.
True story.
All right, let's go to Luquan again. Will JPJ go back to center?
No.
Do you think that he's not a fit at center?
No. How can we explain this in the time that we have? JPJ's tenacity does him a disservice at center because he sees red. I need a person to focus on the snap, making the calls. Then your tenacity counts in. I will never try to deny JPJ's aggression,
right,
and his ability to go after a player. I love his energy. I love his attitude. But there are certain physical components that you need at center that you have to dwell in. And the snap is the most important. When he was the center, there were a few fumbled snaps. And I'm not the only one who's evaluated. This is the reason why he wasn't playing center last year. I get where people see, let's get this guy on the field. First of all, let's get him healthy enough to be on the football field. I don't care what position he's in. That's first and foremost.
Consistently, yes.
Yeah, let's do that consistently. Secondly, everyone has their opinion. I'm just going to tell you from what I've seen, watching this guy on film, he's better suited as a guard, because then I can release that. I can release that aggression. I can release that. Snapping the ball, go get. See, get, block, do your thing. Center, snap the ball first, make the call first, snap the ball first. Then you go there's a little So no, I'm sorry. I don't want to get into too much of a tangent.
No. You're not wrong, and you're the expert there. I think that we should listen to exactly what Link said. But when guys like Link say, he's better suited as guard, when guys like Richie Incognito say he's better suited at guard, who the hell am I to say that? No, you know what? I think he's better center. I'm not going to do that, right? And it's no coincidence that two staffs now have put him at guard. Just because he said he wants to play center doesn't mean that that's the best position for him. So I'll leave that to the discretion of the coaching staff. But like I said, when guys that played the position as far as offensive linemen, and I respect the hell out of, like my brother Lincoln, he says he's better suited at guard. Yeah, ditto. I'm with it.
Yeah, and we already got another question for Link coming to coach the O-line. But as we say on every episode, Link's not going to do it. Yeah. Raider Nation, we'll be back on Monday, 7:30 a.m. Pacific time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. We'll see you then, and maybe we'll have some more news on the Raiders coaching search update. But nonetheless, thanks so much for rocking out with us, and we'll see you on Monday.